been an outcry over some of the terms and conditions of the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative in basic education, which are that candidates should not be involved in any form of studies for the entire period, whether part-time or full-time. We're joined now by Lala Maje, National Project Coordinator for the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, to talk more on this. Lala, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. There's been an outcry, largely with one voice, from unions speaking against the department's decision to prevent teaching assistants from furthering their studies or seeking part-time employment while being contracted to the state. Tell us the rationale and the reasoning that led to this decision.
Good evening, viewers. Thank you. I just want to clarify from the side of the basic education that the requirements that we have put forward for phase 3 have been there in phase 1 and also in phase 2. So if we go back to our framework that is guiding the implementation of the Basic Education Employment Initiative, which is part of the Presidential Employment Stimulus, we find that we have these requirements since 2020 when we started with the initiative. I also want to indicate that whilst we are implementing as basic education, we also have other departments that are implementing the employment stimulus, the presidential employment stimulus. We have 15 departments. In 2020, it was 11 departments. Now they are 15, and all the departments are targeting various categories of youth. For basic education, we are targeting the youth that are not in employment, that are not in training, that are not in education. And we are targeting a specific age category. But if you look at the other stimulus that are implemented in the other departments, you find that they are targeting graduates, they are targeting youth that are in education. So the nation needs to look at the entire employment stimulus from the presidential perspective, not only from basic education, because this is not a basic education initiative. It's an initiative or intervention of government implemented by the president.
Yeah. Start off finding these terms and conditions as counterintuitive, because you would want to bring in these assistants in order to get, I suppose, a degree of income to further their prospects of being employed elsewhere, because they will not remain in those positions forever. Now, if they are not allowed to participate in any other program, wouldn't you think then that limits and prevents their prospects and opportunity of getting employment elsewhere?
I also have to indicate, whilst I'm going to respond to that basic education is implementing a developmental program. We are also offering training skills, and the skills that we are offering, mainly you'll find that people who are studying are already doing the trainings that we are offering, and you will find that they are not going to be attending the trainings that we are offering. We are offering training in ICT, we are offering training in reading, reading champions, where we are guiding them in terms of starting small libraries within communities, inculcating the culture of reading within our schools. So we are not only looking at the employment stimulus for basic education as a way of providing reducing unemployment. We are also mainly looking at capacitating the youth. This is just but one of the requirements, and mainly you find that in schools we have found in phase 1 that principals have complained about the youth that take about 2 weeks to go and study or write exams. We have also found that AG provided us with a finding that there is no value for money where you take young people into our schools and they stay away for 2 to 3 weeks to go and write examinations. But it was a requirement in phase 1, and many of our principals in phase 1 have actually appointed these young people who are studying. Some of them, they managed to leave the project because it was in December in phase 1, and they managed to leave to go back to their studies in 2021. And we found that some this year have started with their studies in January, and some of them have left because they are doing full-time studies. But mainly another thing is that we are taking from the same coffers of government. We are receiving the same funds, and you find that we found with our monitoring, some of the youth that are in the project and studying, they are receiving NSFAS, and they don't see that NSFAS as funding from the same coffers of government. They are thinking that they are only receiving book allowance, but there's also tuition fees, and there's also other requirements that they receive from these funds of NSFAS. I also want to indicate that when you look at the youth that we are looking at, studies are showing, Stats SA is saying that we have 62.5% of the youth that is unemployed. And we are finding that 40% is those without matric. We are finding more than 30% is those with matric. And when you get to those that are studying, we are finding that they are 20%. And when you lead towards the graduates, we find that they are sitting at less than 12%. That the major part, or the biggest number of youth that is not employed, that is unemployed, is mainly the youth that does not have matric, or those that have matric. And we are seeing those that are in education that are supposed to actually focus on their studies so that they can pass. We are finding the numbers are low. I can attest to the fact that once you are dividing your mind between studying and money, you will find most of the time that you don't do well in your studies. I have that experience, personal experience, whereby your mind gets divided. And we are encouraging the youth to continue with their studies, and others, we have actually even moved them towards the direction of Funza Lushaka, which is a bursary that we are offering as basic education. We are also providing other opportunities that are linked to either funding for studies or funding to start their own businesses. And if we can look into the other departments, you find that actually some of these young people would be catered for more in the other departments that are implementing.
But is that guaranteed, though? I mean, what is your plan for those, as you mentioned, the 30%, the 40%, 30% those with matric, 40% those without matric, having gone through phase 1, phase 2, now they're going through phase 3. Where do they go after phase 3? Is it a guarantee that they'll be getting the bursary? Is it a guarantee that they'll be moving into something else?
We also need to remember that it's really all about the young person when information is provided that they are going to utilize that information. What we are implementing in basic education is not going to be permanent. As part of the presidential employment stimulus, we have to remind ourselves that it's not a permanent job. And it is supposed to reach not only the selected few, but it's supposed to reach as many youth as possible in the country. We have received 900,000 applications. And if we are to take the same cohort in the next phase, it means the 280 will remain and the 600 will never receive an opportunity to participate in the initiative and receive the capacity that we are trying to provide to the youth that is in the initiative. And if we can check young people that are in the initiative that were their contracts were terminated, we find that it's not only about the fact that they do not qualify because they are studying. If we check, there's quite a number of the other categories. Some of them have had misconducts in their own schools, and these are things that are not said. Some of them we find that they are not even residing around the school. This initiative is supposed to embrace young people who are in the community, so that the community takes that collaborative effort with the school in terms of implementing the initiative. And we find that some schools did not understand the rules in phase 1. But since we have done workshops in phase 3, we are seeing that schools are correcting those mistakes that have happened in phase 1. But I can guarantee that it's not only the one criteria that we find that young people were taken off. Some of them have more than one of the requirements that they are not meeting, and they are only highlighting just that one, so that attention is made on that one of the studying. But the fact of the matter is, we want to capacitate the youth. Now you take the youth that is already receiving the same capacity through their university, and then we want to provide that same capacity to this youth. The biggest challenge is they are not attending our trainings, and we've got partners that came on board and offer these trainings to the department for free. And these are accredited trainings. We have Microsoft that came on board. We've got UJ that is doing, University of Johannesburg, that is doing training young people on 4IR. And we find that they are not attending these trainings. But basically, some of them is because they are doing the same courses within their own degrees. And it means the purpose of the stimulus is defeated in terms of basic education, because the main thing is we want to capacitate. But how do you capacitate someone who is already capacitated in that area? The youth that are outside that did not receive the opportunity to be part of the initiative are also going to find that the certificates that they will be left with, they will take it further into their future endeavors. And I can also say that it's not only around ICT. We have taken some and trained them around the issues of maintenance of infrastructure. And the youth that are doing these courses are mainly the ones that come without any training, and they really are hungry for that capacity because they are going to use it in their future endeavors.
Yeah. In percentage terms, how many are in further education that you have now taken out of the program?
I can indicate that more or less you'll find that it differs from one province to the other, but it should be less than 5%, maybe 10% in the entire stimulus, which is, I have looked at the numbers that we are receiving in each of the provinces. It's less than 1,000. I think it's mainly in Gauteng where we find that we have more young people that have exited, but they are not exiting because of the fact that they were in education, because of other requirements that they are not meeting. Okay. And the other thing that
Can I take a break? I'll come back to you. I want you to add a little bit more on that National Project Coordinator for the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, Lala.